Fog. Thick, cold, endless. A man's breath fogs the air in front of his own face. His fingers are numb around the grip of his sword. Rain has soaked through iron and leather both. He doesn't know it yet, but this will be the last morning he ever feels warm again. Somewhere ahead, boots stop moving, then silence. The kind of silence that has a weight to it. He raises his hand without turning. Behind him, several thousand men freeze in place, waiting. An arrow crosses the mist in total silence and finds a throat 3 men to his left. Before anyone can react, the forest falls silent once again. By sunrise, Rome would lose something it could never replace. An entire legion was about to step beyond the edge of recorded history. No one spoke. Even the wounded held their breath, listening as the fog swallowed every sound beyond the reach of Roman eyes. His name is Gaius Flavius, a battle-hardened centurion. 22 years in Rome's armies had taught him to fear mistakes more than enemies. Back in Rome, a woman was waiting for him, a small farm near the coast. One final campaign stood between Flavius and the quiet life he had promised her. His men belonged to one of Rome's oldest and most battle-hardened legions, veterans who had survived brutal campaigns from Hispania to Gaul and far beyond. Weeks earlier, sunlight had gleamed across polished breastplates in York. Confidence filled every rank. Nobody imagined those same soldiers would soon vanish into legend. Flavius had already counted the days. One final campaign, then retirement, then home, then a life where the sound of steel would finally fade away. Orders arrived from the Roman command in Britannia. Unrest was spreading across the northern frontier. The legion would march into Caledonia and restore Rome's authority once again. Rome knew them as the 9th Legion, Hispana, veterans of Spain, Gaul, and distant frontiers. 5 weeks earlier, they had marched north believing no enemy could truly stop them. Flavius expected a short, brutal campaign. Shield walls against tribesmen, a quick, one-sided fight, then home. Years later, the Roman historian Tacitus would write, "They make a desert and call it peace." Whether he imagined Caledonia or not, those words echoed through these unforgiving forests. The moment they crossed into the highlands, everything Flavius understood about war stopped applying. Warm southern sun disappeared behind grey cloud. Wind cut through chainmail like it wasn't even there. Every boot sank into thick, sucking mud. For the first time in years, the march slowed to a crawl. A young soldier beside Flavius clutched a small wooden horse, carved by his sister back home in Rome. Flavius noticed his hands shaking, not from cold. He said nothing. There was nothing useful to say.
The trees here grew taller and darker than anything in Hispania. They seemed to lean inward, listening. Formations built for open Roman fields meant almost nothing between trunks this close together. Pattern interrupt. Archaeologists have uncovered Roman weapons, armor fragments, and military equipment across northern Britain. None, however, can be conclusively linked to the legendary fate of the 9th Legion. Flavius pushed the column forward anyway. Turning back meant reporting failure against men Rome called savages. Scouts sent ahead an hour earlier never returned. No signal, no warning shouted back through the trees. Quietly, without announcement, the supply wagons behind them stopped arriving. They were now alone. Several thousand men, cut off, marching deeper into ground no Roman map had ever recorded. The birds had gone silent an hour ago. No one had noticed until just now. Sleep became rare. Men whispered that the wind through these trees sounded almost like a voice. Flavius was no longer leading conquerors forward. Without saying it aloud, he understood. They were being hunted. Then the fog rolled in, sudden, dense, swallowing the front ranks within a matter of minutes. Visibility dropped to 3 paces. Flavius couldn't see the soldier marching directly beside his own shoulder. That is when the screaming started. Not war cries, just the sudden, wet sound of ambush. Shapes moved fast through the gray, striking once, vanishing before any Roman blade could answer them. "Shield wall!" Flavius shouted, his voice cracking with something he hadn't heard in his own voice before. Fear. A shield wall only works against an enemy you can see. His men couldn't see anything at all. These were not supernatural warriors. They were hunters who knew this forest better than Rome knew its own roads. They struck from behind fallen logs, from low branches, from ground the Romans hadn't even noticed. One soldier swung his sword at empty air. A stone axe found him before he could recover his balance. Blood struck the ferns, bright against the gray fog. The smell of iron mixed with wet pine and smoke. Pattern interrupt. Rome conquered empires by mastering open battlefields. Dense forests erased that advantage, turning discipline and formation into dangerous liabilities. The young soldier with the wooden horse dropped his shield, backing into an oak older than Rome itself. A warrior stepped from the mist, blue war paint streaked across his face, rain glistening on his skin, his eyes fixed on the young Roman without the slightest trace of fear. In that instant, Flavius understood. Rome's empire meant nothing here. Only frightened men, dying in the mud. He tried to rally the center, invoking Jupiter, invoking glory, invoking every promise Rome had ever made him.
But glory doesn't stop an axe you never saw coming. The center began to buckle inward. The ambush stretched on for hours. A slow bleed, never a single decisive clash of two armies. Every time the column regrouped, darts fell from the canopy above without a single visible attacker. This wasn't designed to kill them quickly. It was designed to break their minds before their bodies. Some men threw down their shields and ran. In this terrain, running was often the fatal choice. You feel the mud pulling at your boots. The cold seeps through iron into your bones. For the first time, survival matters more than victory. Flavius finally understood the truth. Rome's war machine had met something it was never built to fight. Not a rival army, a landscape, and men who understood every inch of it better than any invader could. He gave the order to break through, toward high, rocky ground he could just make out through the fog. They left the wounded behind, a decision no Roman officer wanted to make. Survival demanded it anyway. They clawed up the muddy slope, leaving equipment and blood in a trail behind them. By nightfall, the survivors broke free of the fog and reached the rocky summit above the tree line. The attacks stopped. Below them, the forest fell completely, unnervingly silent. Only wind remained now. Flavius collapsed onto the cold rock, struggling for breath. Around him, perhaps half the legion still stood, silent, exhausted, each man wondering whether dawn would ever come. They built a hasty barricade with what remained. Discipline, barely, was holding the survivors together. Around small fires, men actually began to laugh. Quiet, exhausted laughter, the kind that means relief. One soldier cleaned his sword slowly, telling a joke about his mother-in-law. Others actually smiled at it. Flavius allowed himself for the first time in days to think about her, about the farm, about home. The young soldier looked at his wooden horse, now stained dark, and finally let himself weep quietly. Tomorrow they would march south, back to the wall, back to the light of the empire. Flavius looked at the legion's golden eagle standard, battered but still firmly held. Tradition said that mattered. As long as the eagle stood, the legion was not defeated. It could still be rebuilt, given time. For one full night, exhausted men believed the worst was finally behind them. They were badly mistaken. The Picts had not given up. They had simply waited for the Romans to trap themselves completely. At midnight, the temperature dropped sharply. Then, one by one, the camp's fires began to die out. Not from wind, from wet hides thrown deliberately from the dark. The camp went pitch black. Then came a sound. Wooden clubs striking leather shields. Steady, rhythmic, closing in from every direction. Pattern interrupt. Some historians believe Iron Age British tribes used rhythmic drumming and coordinated noise to spread fear long before the fighting even began. You cannot fight what you cannot see, and right now, the surviving Romans could see nothing at all. Flaming arrows arced upward, briefly lighting a hillside surrounded on every side by waiting men. They didn't charge immediately. The waiting itself was the weapon, wearing down whatever courage remained. Flavius drew his blade one last time. He no longer thought of glory, only of her, waiting. When the attack came, it wasn't a clash of two armies. It moved like a single unstoppable wave. The barricade shattered within moments. Commands dissolved into screams. Steel vanished into darkness. Then only the wind remained, where a Roman legion had stood. For one heartbeat, Flavius looked back into the fog behind him. No one was following anymore. The young legionnaire fell to his knees, sword still sheathed, as shapes closed silently around him. The eagle standard, the sacred soul of the legion, was torn from the standard-bearer's hands and thrown into mud. By dawn, the hill had gone completely silent. Fog rolled back in, quietly covering everything below. Weeks later, Roman scouts reportedly found only untouched forest. No bodies, no eagle, no trace that several thousand Roman soldiers had ever stood there at all. Modern historians disagree sharply on what happened next. The popular legend says the 9th died here, in Caledonia. Yet the mystery deepens. Archaeologists later uncovered inscriptions placing soldiers of the 9th in the Netherlands years after this campaign, which means the truth may be stranger than the legend. Perhaps some survived, transferred, forgotten by history instead. No confirmed grave has ever settled the argument. Empires are remembered for the lands they conquered, but history remembers them even longer for the mysteries that refuse to die.